Hello, tea friends. This is Barb Jelly of Barbs Tea Service, and we are back for our Barbs Tea Service podcast, courtesy on TV Studios. And I am here with studio engineer, Arm Candy.
And Candy.
You are Candy. I guess it's been a while, so
we're tanned and rusted and can't talk.
Yes. Co-host Chris Gully. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
So, it's been a while since we've been in the studio. We took a 2-week hiatus.
Yes.
And
we've forgotten everything we know about podcasting.
We have. It's a whole new learning curve. So this is our 15th podcast.
Amazing.
It is.
Wow.
It's that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of that awkward time in a podcast life. It's like, should your podcast start dating? Should wear makeup? What about the podcaster learner's permit? That we need to start thinking about.
Exactly.
It can be tumultuous.
Yes. So we're gonna do a test drive.
Yes.
And hopefully we will pass.
All right. Very good.
So today, as always, we've got a lot to pack in because, as I mentioned, we were on the road for almost 2 weeks.
Yes.
And we went to Canada.
We
went to Kingston and to Montreal.
We did.
We had a family reunion. We did some family ancestry research. And then we also experienced Poutine and another presidential home, which I think is going to put us at like 10.
Yes.
9 or 10.
Yeah.
Because when we went to Canada, once we went up to Montreal, we came back through Vermont and New York. And we stopped at a super charming city in the Hudson Valley.
Yes.
With Gilded Age connections.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, this is a tea zer that we're going to have a special guest.
Yes.
Who we met in Troy.
Right.
Has connections to the HBO series Gilded Age.
She's kind of the historical consultant.
Yes.
And she kind of corrects the crew there for anachronisms and things that really didn't happen at the time.
Or should have been
happened.
there. So she's a person for detail. And
Yes.
she is excited about her podcast and wants to be a guest. So that's coming up.
And she is actually a real treat.
Right.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So today I thought what we'd do is, because we had been all over the map, literally, from Kingston to Hudson Valley, I thought we'd kind of jump right into the middle of our trip and talk about Montreal.
Yes.
So we'll talk about Montreal, Poutine, Marc Beauchemin, crazy restaurant at the end of the good road.
Yes.
Un petit peu of family history.
Right.
Old Montreal, and then some of these historic venues in Montreal that have hosted international events.
Yes.
So that's a lot.
All right. Let's get to it.
Mais d'abord, le thé. Okay. On our last podcast, we were speaking about France, Versailles,
Right.
Louis the 14th, 15th, and 16th. And so we had a French tea, and we talked a little bit of Parlez-vous français. We did a little bit of that.
Yes.
And it applies to our theme here, too, because Montreal is part of French Canada.
It is.
And so I selected a tea that pays homage to Canada as a whole.
Right.
And it's a maple tea. And it is from Sri Lanka. I actually purchased this, and I'm going to show this to the camera for those who are watching. I purchased this in a Vermont gift shop. This was the home of Calvin Coolidge.
Right.
So a little teaser there, too, about an upcoming topic. But it was in the gift shop. And because it was far enough north, this is still bilingual.
Yes.
So it's in French
Yes.
and English, and it is maple tea or thé d'érable.
D'érable.
Yes. So, shall we take a little taste of this?
I'm excited.
What do you think of this? This is a black tea with maple flavors.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely it's got the maple infusion, a little bit of a lot of aftertaste here on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
They can't all be winners.
Yeah. I'm trying to be diplomatic, but
yeah. Okay. So this tea comes from a company in Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is known for its tea, Ceylon tea, because Sri Lanka was formerly known as Ceylon.
Ceylon, right.
And it has an amazing climate.
Right. A lot of different, I think they call it terroir.
Yes.
Okay.
So different soils and elevations, and it really contributes to a variety of tea. And their black teas are known to be robust and bold, and also have citrusy notes.
Yep.
But I think this is probably overpowered by the maple.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we might
moving on.
Well, here's another interesting thing.
Yeah.
It has an expiration date
Yes.
on it.
We were just talking about that.
Right. One of the podcasts that we had, we talked about the different shelf lives of tea. This one actually has it printed on it.
Right.
And it is this will expire in 2027. And so it's really pushing the envelope of black teas. We talked about usually it's 2 years. You can go up to 36 months. But I have a feeling that we won't have to worry about an expiration date.
Probably not.
This might not make the tea closet.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about Montreal.
Yes.
So first, a few facts. Montreal is the largest city in Quebec, second largest in Canada.
Right.
And it started in 1642. It was known as the Ville Marie, City of Mary. Later it turned to Mount Royal or Montreal.
And it's on an island, too.
Yes, it is. That was interesting. We kind of experienced that, right? So the census as of 2021 had the population of Montreal at about 1.7 million. But the whole area the whole metropolitan area is about 4 million.
Yeah.
So it is the second largest metropolitan area in Canada. And of course, the primary language, the official language, is French. And they were surpassed in the 1970s in economic growth and population by Toronto.
Right.
But it's still very much a vibrant city.
Yes.
It's has a lot of culture.
It does.
There's art, great food.
Yes.
And
which we did our best to experience.
We did. So there's still a lot going on. And also, as I mentioned, it has a couple of interesting venues that hosted international events.
They did.
And we saw them on our tour. We took a tour of Montreal, and it was the first city in Canada to host an Olympics, the only city to host the Summer Olympics. You know what year that was?
In the 70s sometime, right?
It was.
Okay.
76.
Okay.
76. I was still in high school. Okay. And we saw that Olympic Stadium.
Right.
You can't miss it. It's very distinctive. It's got that tower.
The leaning tower.
Yes.
Which, according to the tour guide, actually was not completed in time for the Olympics, which, I don't know, should have been a problem.
Yes.
but it's very distinctive.
They persevered.
Yeah.
And then they also hosted, and I'm going to read off the official name, the International and Universal Exposition, otherwise known as
Expo 67.
Expo 67, right.
Yeah.
And Chris, you and I are going to go, we're going to join Mr. Peabody and Sherman in the Wayback Machine. We're going to go all the way back to 1967 because we were both at Expo 67, part of our family's vacations.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't know each other.
Right.
But this was, and we both have a lot of family in Canada.
Right.
So this was kind of a natural progression of vacations.
Yeah.
So we went to Expo 67. And what's interesting, So we went to a restaurant that was recommended by our tour guide, Auberge Vieux Port,
Right.
which means
well, port is port.
Yep. Old Port.
Old Port. Okay.
Just because it's in Old Montreal.
Right.
But he said it was the second best rooftop restaurant in Montreal. Best view.
And we kept waiting for the other shoe to drop.
He wouldn't disclose the first one. Yeah. So either it's rather mysterious or he just didn't want to share that. Yeah. Anyway, from that rooftop, we could see what's left of Expo 67.
Yes.
And one of them is the U.S. Pavilion.
Yes. The big globy thing.
Right. The kind of that wire mesh globe.
Yeah.
And now it's an agricultural museum, and you can go and visit. Mm-hmm. Another part of Expo 67 that's still there is the habitat.
Right. L'habitat.
Yeah. And do you remember what was so significant about l'habitat?
Well, I mean, in physical, I mean, it's just this boxy kind of thing.
Right.
Apartments. And wasn't it supposed to be like for affordable housing at the time?
Yes.
Like it was a grand experiment in that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was it was a revolutionary idea for low-income housing.
Right.
Ironically, today, it's very expensive. It's a condominium community,
right? And
they're very expensive.
Yeah.
But you can do tours there.
All right.
So might be something for us to do in 2027.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be fun to take that tour?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as our tea is expiring.
That's right. Long gone.
Yeah.
Long gone.
Okay.
Okay. So do you remember anything about the Expo 67?
Oh, that was a minute ago.
It was.
I think I have just general and not very interesting recollections of that. But for what it's worth.
Yeah, because we were very young.
Yes, yes.
And some of the things that stand out to me, a few memories, and this was aided by my brothers because I went with my three older brothers, my parents, my aunt and uncle, and my cousin, who was my age.
Right.
So my aunt had discouraged us from going to the U.S. Pavilion because she said it was just U.S. crass.
Yeah. Movie stars and
big pictures of movie stars and
who wants to see that?
Yeah. So, and I also probably had a very long line.
Yes.
But the other thing I remember, as someone who's very young would remember, not all the great pavilions and the shows and the theater, but I remember there was this restaurant, this cafeteria.
Yes.
And it was kind of this nouveau approach for us that you could eat. You could put everything that you wanted on your plate.
Right.
It was one price, fixed price. So you could load up your plate.
You could.
And they had all kinds of great things.
Yes.
And my cousin loaded up. His parents weren't really paying attention. He loaded up on beans and French fries. So he gets to the end of the line, and they're kind of mad at him. But that was a standout of the trip. And also the fact that, hey, Brian might have been onto something.
That's right.
Kind of sounds a little bit like poutine.
All right.
Okay.
Wow.
So anyway, one thing I want to talk about, though, before we get to poutine is a restaurant that we visited in Old Montreal.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Did you love Old Montreal?
Yes. Very charming. And it was very well done. And, it's very walkable. And it was great fun.
Right. Lots of art galleries and these restaurants. So we stopped our first night there. We stopped at a restaurant that had served tapas.
Right.
Small plates.
Right.
Petite plates. And the server saw the shirt that you were wearing.
So I was wearing a kind of a Hawaiian style shirt, but it was so when you're going on an extended 2-week road trip, you empty your closet out of because it's got to last you the whole time. So one of my selections was a Detroit Lions Hawaiian shirt, which I wore that evening to this tapas place. And go ahead.
Well, he said, you're from Detroit.
Yes.
And I said, how did you know? And he said, well, the shirt.
Yeah.
He recognized the
Lions
emblem because it's a little subtle.
Yeah.
And he told us that he was in a fantasy football.
Yes. So yeah, we're in Montreal, and he's telling us about his fantasy football league, and he knows all about the Lions, and that's where you go. The NFL is pretty good.
Far-reaching.
Yeah.
Far-reaching.
Yeah.
Yes, because I think my brother said that he doesn't know any of the
Anybody on the Montreal Alouettes in the CFL.
right. So that was kind of fun, and it was encouraging because we could really be proud of the Lions. We always are, but especially this year.
Right.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to mention too was the fact that, well, let's talk about poutine. We had a search for poutine.
We did.
And it's not really that hard to find. I mean, they have it in the fast food restaurants.
Yes. We were introduced to a chain called Saint Hubert.
Yes.
They serve chicken.
And poutine. Our kids got it at McDonald's.
Yeah.
But when we were in Montreal, I really wanted to get some authentic poutine.
Yes.
So
it was a little bit of a misfire.
It was a big misfire. But this is where I say smartphones probably earn their title as a smartphone. Because I typed in poutine nearby. And it came up with this restaurant. It was a 10-minute walk from our hotel. We walked there, and guess what?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
This doesn't look like a poutine vibe.
No.
It's almost like a fern bar. And
they served healthy food.
They served healthy food. I said to our hostess, "Do you serve poutine?" And she just laughed. She said, "No." So we were really hungry, and we're like, "Okay, I guess we're going to be forced to eat some healthy food." Probably a good idea.
Yep.
We had the best salads ever.
Yes.
Wonderful yogurt dressing.
Yeah.
But you ordered kombucha.
Yes, as my drink. Yes.
Yes, and so they sell this. It's a Canadian brand, Club Kombucha. And we're going to do a whole podcast.
It was very good.
Kombucha. It's a fermented tea.
It is.
And this is kind of a fizzy one. We had
very refreshing. It was a hot day, and I enjoyed it very much.
Right. So we did get a little bit of tea time in Montreal, and that was it. Okay, so let's talk about poutine. So we did actually end up having it our last evening in Montreal.
Right.
And
we found a legitimate, had a sign up saying that we serve poutine here.
The restaurant was called Montreal Poutine.
It was hard to miss.
We're pretty sharp.
That's right, yeah.
Can't pull one over on us.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you can, but.
Yeah, back at the Hell Food Place. Yeah. Okay. So, Chris, do you know what the 3 ingredients of poutine are?
You're going to tell me, I think.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Okay. So, it's French fries, cheese curds, and brown gravy. Okay. Now, we hear about poutine all the time.
Yes.
But in the long history of Montreal and Quebec, it's relatively new on the scene.
It is, yes.
Mid 20th century.
Right.
Okay, in the 1950s.
So it was kind of another example of kind of what working people might eat for quick energy and as a sauce to put on their favorite foods. And,
right.
And now it's become a thing.
Right. It did. It had humble beginnings.
All right.
And it was used a lot at some of these greasy spoons and at hockey, ice skating arenas. It made me think of like when we were younger, when we were kids, and we go to the ice skating places near our house, and they would serve that awful pizza. But so this is what was the nourishment. Their fast food at the time, and it had long been kind of poked fun up. They said, Quebec, their cuisine. But it slowly started moving to Montreal via food trucks. And it got to this one fancy restaurant in the 1970s and became kind of an elevated.
Yes, isn't that amazing?
It really is. And so it was perceived as a backwoodsy, unsophisticated. Now it's haute cuisine.
I know.
And in 1983, we kind of did a little backtrack, and a Burger King started selling it. So then it once again became a just a kind of a junk food.
There you go.
But they've had a lot of different varieties. They have a lobster poutine.
Yes.
And actually, Rachel, our daughter, was telling us that in Portland, Maine,
Yeah.
they went and had poutine, and the French fries were fried in duck fat.
Yes.
And the restaurant was called
Duck fat.
How about that? Okay. So now its origins, who really came up with it, is kind of fuzzy because a lot of people took credit for it once it became very popular.
Uh-huh.
And also the etymology is a little bit fuzzy because according to one of the Merriam-Webster dictionary, they say that or the encyclopedia, says that it came from the French word mess, or the Quebecian slang of mess.
Right.
Others say it comes from the English word pudding, because it's kind of a
messy pudding.
Messy pudding, right. But anyway, that is poutine. And how did you like your poutine?
It's an acquired taste. It wouldn't be my go-to. It's a very definitely it's a calorie bomb.
Yes.
Of the first order. We're having it. It's probably more of a cold weather. You're out there ice fishing or something like that.
Right.
But on a hot July day,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so if we go back into you could wait till 26,
absolutely
27 before you had your next poutine.
Yes.
Okay.
The countdown starts now.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to go from poutine to giblet.
Giblet.
So you pronounce it better than I do.
Giblet.
Giblet. Okay. So real quick.
Avec barboute.
Avec barboute. Right.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned, part of our trip to Montreal was to do a little
family history, family ancestry history thing. Yeah.
And
you have deep French Canadian roots.
I do. So my mother's parents were from
Sorel,
which is just about
30-40 minutes
north
east of Montreal.
Right. Yep. So in your research, you had found the church where my grandpa had been baptized.
Right.
And you also found traces dating back to the original settlers from Normandy.
Exactly. Yeah.
That came to
Sorel. Yeah, and settled there.
And they all ride up to Paul.
So a gentleman named Paul. I'm not sure of the pronunciation. Hus was his surname.
Okay.
So maybe Hughes or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he, so a little as an aside. So he married a woman, had like 8 or 9 kids. I think all of which survived to adulthood, which was kind of unusual for the time.
Right.
They had a lot of kids, and then they had a lot of kids, through the years. So one of the challenges if you're doing a genealogy thing, especially for that area, is that in order to kind of keep themselves straight on kind of what family line, they would kind of add to their surname DIT, DEET. And then some other name. So it might be their occupation or what they sold or what they did or if they were loyal or,
right.
And that sort of thing. And then this one family had taken the name of Beauchemin, which literally translates to good road.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll turn it back over to you where we ended up with that.
Okay. So, yes, this was really interesting. For a family from our perspective, as hopefully you find it interesting too. But so they when they would do this DIT, AKA almost okay. So eventually the surnames would get dropped, and you'd have this other thing. So Beauchemin, they had when they came in in the 17th century. Right when New France was coming along, and the Beauchemin, when some of them immigrated to the U.S., they changed their name to Good Road.
Right. Anglicized it completely.
And Beauchemin sounds so pretty.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, so what you had found in your research was that descendants of the Beauchemin had opened a restaurant in this remote area of Sorel. And literally at the end of the Good Road.
It was, yes. And when we were kind of talking about this, I was reminded one of our favorite authors is Douglas Adams. He wrote A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, and the other book you wrote was The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. So this is kind of like that. It's the restaurant at the end of the good road.
Right, right. And they don't have very many, any other retail stores. So
Right.
when we wanted to pay at the end.
Yes, we discovered that our money was no good, literally. So they didn't take credit cards. Our debit card was the wrong kind, so we had to go back on the good road to find a good ATM, and then back down the good road to go pay for our meal. So we didn't want to do a dine and dash.
Right. So and that's just the point of it being so remote.
Yeah, right.
Good road.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But you're still kind of far from civilization.
Right.
But their specialty is
Giblé, which is it's a stew. We would call it a stew. Potatoes, carrots, this wonderful broth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of those things. It was just so well balanced. You take a spoonful and you immediately want to have another one and another one and another one. It was so good. And then it's prepared with barboot, which is catfish.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just you have to kind of take the flesh off the backbone and kind of set the bones aside. It was very good. And they would serve it with white bread. And I would call it Vidalia onion. They called it onion espagnole.
Mm-hmm.
And butter.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your starch accompaniment to the meal. That was your sandwich, and it was great. It was absolutely wonderful, and just a completely unexpected pleasure.
It was. They had you could also order it with perch.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And
as a side of fried perch.
right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those meals that we've talked about that came from
humble roots.
Yeah. Like.
And it's been refined and
like haggis.
Yes.
With the awful
Yeah.
Ingredients, and this. You could just see, okay, here's what are we having for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
Well, I got some potatoes and here we'll throw in catfish.
Yeah.
Here's a piece of bread, put an onion on it.
Right.
And you want some perch? We've got perch left over. So
very good.
That was really an interesting place.
Uh-huh.
And for those of you just on the Beauchemin, the family no longer owns it.
Right.
They sold it a few years ago to another
proprietor.
But they still have the same charm.
Yeah.
It's kind of community dining.
It is, yeah.
And you can bring in your own
wine or beer.
Right?
Yeah.
And okay. So I don't know, how much time do we
we're down to a couple minutes,
so might have to save
some of our stuff.
So yes, I do want to talk about the church where my grandfather was baptized, and the records that were found, a real treasure. So maybe we'll put that in to kick off our next one, because we'll be talking about Vermont, and we'll talk a little bit about Kingston, and Troy, Hudson Valley.
Yes.
Okay.
It's all coming. And what do we hear?
Oh, the tea kettle. It's saying it's time to go. We'll have to wrap up our maple tea.
Yep. Yeah. Very good. And
want to thank you, Chris, again for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
And also to Auntie B Studios for allowing us to be in the studio. And we're going to get caught up on our reader and viewer feedback.
Yes.
We've had a lot since we've been gone.
Yep.
We missed it.
I know.
We missed everybody. So, as we like to say at Barbs Tea Service, please stay tuned.
Very good. We're out.